Hi everyone and welcome back. I know, I missed for more than 10 days now, but that's because we traveled to Munich for the high-end show with my crew, the biggest hi-fi show on the planet. And if you are curious about everything that we ate, drank, saw and listened to, you can check our very long show report in the description box below. We have several best of show awards, several notable mentions, and of course a few facepalm moments. It's everything there. Please check it out. But right now let's focus on something new, on a new hi-fi brand and also on their very first product. These guys are called DG and Ace, or DA for short, and their first product is called Alpha Pro, a dedicated DAC, preamp and headphone amplifier that goes for $699 US. Their official distributor in the US is Apos Audio that sent me the review unit, and I thank them for that. However, all my thoughts and opinions are always my own, no matter what, and let's go ahead with this review. While the build quality is great and we get a fully CNC machined aluminum case that will protect it from accidental dents or scratches, the thing that impressed me was its unusual look and the light show it can produce. It rocks a transparent front panel made out of resin, I believe, and I don't remember seeing anything like it. Once you connect it to a digital source and power it on, a light show will start dancing to the rhythm of the music. And if that's bothering you, you can change that to a pulsating light show. You can leave them brightly lit or you can shut them off, and the only LED light remaining will be for the gain position, for the selected input and output. The volume wheel has its own circular light, and the higher you go, the brighter the light becomes, and I actually enjoy the light show, especially when using it with headphones. Moving on to controls, we have a couple of physical buttons on the front panel that lets you select the gain, the output and the input. Everything else was moved on its back. There you'll find 3 digital inputs such as USB, optical and coaxial, plus quite an unusual circular Bluetooth antenna that cannot be seen when looking at the unit frontally. We have the usual RCA and XLR outputs, and you can also spot a pair of RCA inputs just in case you might use it as a dedicated preamp. As a new hi-fi brand, you need to stand out from the crowd, not only with some unusual design decisions, but also with some cool stuff on the inside. I'm getting bored seeing all over again the same DAC chips, the same op amps, the same off-the-shelf components, the same switching mode power supplies, putting zero creativity in the creation process, but luckily these guys are quite different, putting their engineering skills to good use. First of all, this is a 4-way, fully balanced input-output device, and while just one single flagship level ESS Sabre 9039 Pro DAC chip has been used, all of its 8 channels have been used, basically paralleling 2 channels and thus lowering the noise flow and also bringing the dynamic range a little bit higher. Instead of using 2 femtosecond clocks like most hi-fi brands are using for multiple of 44.1 kHz and 48 kHz, these guys used 3 femtosecond clocks, and according to their words, all of that was put in there to lower the jitter, the digital noise, considerably. The usual 3rd generation XMOS digital receiver is on board, including a Bluetooth chipset that supports LDAC and aptX HD codecs. However, the absolute best part that I'm excited about this unit is that we have a fully discrete amplifier stage, headphone amplifier stage, consisting of 8 transistors per channel. We have 4 channels, so 32 transistors in total, that are outputting up to 6 watts per channel in 32 ohms, which should be more than enough for some planar or high impedance dynamic headphones, but more about that in a minute. Last but not least, we do not have a digital volume control or digital attenuator. Instead, we have an analog volume control that is not losing bits of information once you lower the volume. And this is basically all you need to know about the Alpha Pro. Before I hit some eardrums and tell you a good deal about its sound, Let's talk about its thermals a little bit because those are important as well. We have 32 transistors inside, so yes, this is a fully discrete amp stage, and overall this unit will consume around 50 watts. And that already tells me that it works in Class AB operation. Fully discrete amp stage, Class AB operation. I believe that Alpha Pro is already on the right path. After 8 hours of non-stop music playback, I recorded 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit, which is much lower than what I expected. I believe that these guys did a marvelous job at keeping this temperature very low, so you can use it 24 hours a day and that wouldn't be a problem. Alright guys, let's talk about Sonics and let's talk about things that impressed me most. When I get new toys to play with, I usually try to test their limits. In this case, I wanted to see how powerful is the headphone amplifier, because some things you can measure like the output power, but some things you need to test with your own measurement apparatuses, with your ears. If you need to go, maximum power with hard to drive headphones, if the amplifier is clipping, if the bass is dropping some energy levels, if the bass is distorting, all of that you should test with your own ears and with your own headphones. In this case, I didn't go easy on this one, quite the contrary actually. I went super hard on this one. I used some of the hardest to drive headphones, the Headphone Amp Unveiled, T+A Solid Therapy, and also HD800S by Sennheiser. And of course, I used some bass heavy tracks because about 80 to 90% of the power an amplifier produces is consumed by the bass region. At 2 o'clock position, the SPL levels were going above 110 dB with the Headphone Amp, and yes, that was very loud, yet the bass was refusing to lower the energy. The bass was far from being distorting and amplifier was not clipping at all. It was still keeping the pace, rhythm and timing with the music. The first track I tried was Bass and Drum Solo by Nils Lofgren. And of course, this is a track that is heavy on the bass and drums, as the name track suggests. It's very intensive in this regard. It's fast, it has a fast tempo. And of course, I listened to this one for a couple of times with all of these headphones, and I was surprised that the energy levels, dynamics were not going down with the Headphone Amp. This is the most important thing that you need to know about this headphone amplifier, because usually dynamics are going down with weak output stages, with some op-amps in there in the signal path that cannot sustain a higher current delivery, but this was not the case with the Alpha Pro. The energy levels were high, dynamics were high, the sound was punchy, was alive, and more importantly, I was toy tapping and smiling on this track with the Headphone Amp on my head. While the energy levels were not going past 9000, like that can happen with some oversized, overkill headphone amplifiers like Cain Soul 170HA, I was surprised by the layered, clean and impactful bass performance. And to tell you the truth, I don't think I experienced a tapping or an SMSL unit at this price that sounded as impactful and strong as the Alpha Pro sounded to me. Naturally, everything else, the Headphone Amp Unveiled, T+A Solid Therapy, HD800S, sounded very similar or maybe even better on several occasions, because all of those don't need as much current and as much voltage, and of course the Alpha Pro was driving them pretty easily. The highest volume I could reach was around 1 o'clock position with the Susvara Unveiled and 12 volume position with the T+A and HD800S, so again I had almost an unlimited headroom available on tap. Bad Guy by Billie Eilish starts with powerful pulsating bass notes with a very strong voice that you can hear very close to your face, almost, invading your personal space. This track, I believe, sounds great on loudspeakers because you have this very layered sound and pretty substantial soundstage, but via headphones it's almost scary at times because the bass is really strong and the voice is like shushing into your ears. Very close to your body. And again, both the Susvara Unveiled and the solitary P didn't lack any bass definition or control, as the unit was bravely driving these two without any kind of trouble. The sound got some weight, it was full-bodied, and I know it's sometimes heresy calling an ESS Sabre-based unit full-bodied, but it seems that DNA team knows exactly how to deal with the digitus and listening fatigue. Splu by Ovoid drops some serious bass notes later, and again, I can't seem to reach the upper power limits of the Alpha Pro. The bass seems playful and fun, and there is more than enough power on top for every headphone in my collection. The second surprise that I saw coming the moment I saw those components inside is actually the tone and timbre of the Alpha Pro. If you take a topping or an SMSL device in the same price bracket with the Alpha Pro and you start comparing them, then the topping in the SMSL will be very detailed, transparent, distortionless, but not as fun, not as rich, not as full-bodied as the Alpha Pro. The Alpha Pro is definitely adding some fun factor into the mix compared to the usual suspects in the same price category. I can easily hear the good traits of the flagship ESS Sabre silicone, like an amazing detail retrieval, a very good transparency, a really nice pinpoint, imaging that I can focus on the notes pretty easily, even on those playing in the background. But I cannot hear the usual letdowns, like an over sharpness in the treble, like getting a little bit of digitus, some listening fatigue, or empowering the S sound so strong that the sound becomes aggressive. That is not happening with the Alpha Pro. And while this is not what I would describe as a milk with honey presentation, there is a hint of that sound that lets you enjoy the music, not only hear all of its subtleties. The third part won't surprise you at all. With a measured signal-to-noise ratio of 133 dB, all while never experiencing distortion or noise in a Head-Fi based or stereo setup, it won't be a surprise to anyone hearing a ton of micro detail information. This thing cuts deep into your music, and hearing people inhaling and exhaling air from their lungs is no longer a difficult quest. The contour of the notes is crystal clear, but all of that is not bringing any kind of over sharpness that entry-level ESS Sabre converters are known for. The sound relaxes you and lets you enjoy every nuance from your music without having some extra rituals from your part, like having an expensive drink in your vicinity or anything like that. It's just clean and defined no matter what music you're listening to. Old blues are much noisier and grainier and less dynamically appealing versus modern recordings, but all of that didn't bother me at all with a less than perfect presentation, and I was again able to enjoy every moment. The so-called soundstage, however, was not so open or deep sounding, even with open back headphones. It was average sized in this regard, and this is probably the only thing that was not so impressive on the Alpha Pro. I believe it still provides plenty of special cues, so I believe that imaging is very good on this one. You can focus on things playing in the background pretty easily and on the things that are playing around you, but don't expect a very airy, an amazing stereo separation, lots of air in between the notes. That is not happening. So it's not really crowded or upfront, close and personal sounding, but at the same time it's not huge and airy sounding either. I believe it's somewhere in between. Some pricier units, but not all, can sound better in this regard, more impressive, like for example the FiO K17, but not K19, very interesting. And also XDO TA32 are also bigger sounding in the soundstage department. So I believe it sounds more like 2.5D rather than 3D. This one is not enveloping you fully with a blanket of sounds. Everything is placed in front of you, and the image and the sound canvas is just, medium-sized, is not huge. Think of it of a unit that shows you a precise location of the notes, so the stereo imaging is actually very good, but it's average when it comes to soundstage. At the end of the day, I believe that big sounding units usually have some big output stages and overkill power supplies, and all of that is coming with a hefty price point as well, which is not really the case of the Alpha Pro. It's quite easy describing its frequency response. The bass, for example, has the usual traits of fully discrete headphone amplifiers, or just fully discrete amplifiers, especially biased into Class A/B operation. This one is definitely has a thicker tone in the bass. The bass is lively, it's punchy. It's not just, quality-wise very clean, transparent and layered, but quantity-wise very important. You get plenty of oomph, meat on the bone, and fullness in the bass, something that, for example, op-amp based amplifiers cannot provide you so easily. So you get the quality of the bass, high quality, but also the quantity in the bass, getting punchy, lively, and quite weighty in the bass as well. In the end, I believe it works great with bass-intensive music, but also with relaxed jazz, with relaxed blues, where the bass is much longer, have longer trails, longer sustains, and it can do that as well. While the mid-range isn't exactly colored or sweet sounding, there is just a smidge, just a hint of that. And it's not what I would call, a dead neutral or a flat sounding unit in the mid-range. There is definitely a little bit of fullness as well. The voices, for example, they never sounded shouty or dry or, lacking emotion, lacking soul. They were not super sweet, but I definitely felt the emotion and the energy that goes into that vocal performance. Interestingly, when listening to acoustic music, you'll realize immediately that this instrument is made out of wood, while this electric guitar sounds much rawer, not having such a long reverb, sounding sharper but faster at the same time. All of this texture is easily reproduced by the Alpha Pro, and I believe that the mid-range is just fine on this one. The treble, however, is the standard ESS Sabre affair, but again without the usual letdowns of these DAC chips. So expect a very extended treble. It's clean, it's defined, lots of information. You don't need, to close your eyes to hear all and everything. Forget about roll-offs in the upper treble. You can hear all of that energy without much trouble. But at the same time, don't expect lots of sharpness or just an over sharpness in the treble region. That is not happening. Don't expect hearing, some aggressive character or something that is slashing your eardrums. That is again not happening. I tried a few metal tunes, a few treble intensive tracks with some bright headphones, and that wasn't really a problem. That was actually quite pleasing to experience a strong treble performance, but without getting bothering in long listening sessions. Last but not least, I decided to test its noise floor with a pair of ultra-sensitive IEMs, and in my case I used the FiO FH19, which have a sensitivity of 109, 110 dB per 1 single milliwatt of power. So yes, these are getting very loud with just 1 single milliwatt. They don't need that much power to be fully driven. Of course, I used the 4.4mm balanced output, so I could blast full power if I wanted. Interestingly, on the low gain, there was a faint, really faint, barely audible white noise. I wouldn't call it hiss or hum because I could hear it only when inserting and taking out this headphone jack. It was more like a white noise, but I could experience it and hear it only when music was on pause. When music was playing, I couldn't hear it at all. Mid-gain was pretty much the same. The only difference is that I had less play on the volume wheel. And on the high gain, yes, I could hear a barely audible, a faint hiss or hum. But high gain was not designed to drive ultra-sensitive IEMs. It was designed for hard-to-drive headphones, planar magnetics, and high impedance dynamic headphones, and that's what you should do on the high gain. I believe it works just fine with IEMs on the low and mid gain, and it's quite noise-free if you ask me. In the end, should you get the Alpha Pro? Let's check all of the pros. So this is a 100% original product. These guys didn't copy anyone. I believe it's fun to use, I believe it looks quite unique, and I believe it sounds like a proper hi-fi component, and I believe that in the end, having fun and being creative while doing it is the most important thing that a hi-fi maker should do, and all of these were interlocked when developing the Alpha Pro. Is this $699 investment is fun to use for you? Will it elevate you to the next level? These are the questions that you should address yourselves. And if the answer is yes, then you should definitely check the Alpha Pro. Considering the gear I use and considering that everything you can see on my audio rack, it will be fun to use for me, that is for sure, but it won't sound better compared to what I have already. However, it might be a huge leap forward for you, especially if you use several headphones and several IEMs. It never sounded boring to me. Actually, I found a strong connection with my music, something that you won't find easily in units costing less than $1,000. I think its price point was fully justified, and yes, I can wholeheartedly recommend this one to you. Until next time, folks, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Cheers!